Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Meet America. I'm Annie Griffin, your host, and today's subject again is going to be stealing our wild horses away. I promised my viewers that I was going to go up personally and videotape a roundup in Nevada to just take a look and see what kind of conditions these horses were in. Were they indeed starving? Was the environment being hurt? And I did that. And so I'm going to be showing you the footage that I have brought back for you. And I did some interviews of people who are trying to save the horses up there. And I want to first remind all of you that the Mustang is the strongest horse in the world. If you remember the film Halaldo, where that marvelous Mustang went to the east to participate in the desert endurance ride, and it won. And it was just an amazing film and an amazing accomplishment that this horse did. And this horse was brought back to America and released on a ranch where since then his bloodlines have continued. But now the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, under the mandate of President Obama and Secretary Salazar, are removing our wild horses at an alarming rate. And they're lying about their numbers. They're lying about the condition of the horses. We saw the horses. They were in fine condition. And they're lying about what the horses are doing to the environment. You would think that they were excavation machines, the way the BLM goes on about how the horses are destroying the environment. And yet the BLM allows mining to continue and mountaintops to be blown up, whole mountaintops to be blown up. And these horses do nothing but enhance our public lands. And so it is a crime that is going on by our government to steal away our tax dollars. And I saw government employing going on to round up these wild horses, to keep people in jobs. And this is one of the ways that they're doing it. And jobs are wonderful, but not when it comes to rounding up our wild horses. If anything, they can put hay out there, and that's jobs, if they're so concerned about the horses. But the horses don't need hay. And in fact, they suffer when they're given hay because they eat brush. They're an amazing animal. And as we allow these wonderful, strong horses, the strongest horses on earth, and we have the privilege to have them on our continent, as we allow them to steal them away, so is our own strength as a nation being stolen away. Because the lack of integrity and the lack of honor and the corruption and rot that is so deep is stealing away the strength of this country. So I hope that you'll call President Obama and tell him that your vote hinges on him saving the wild horse. And we have been going to courts, and the judges back off for the most part, and they allow it to continue, even though we've given them everything imaginable to evidence that these horses don't need to be removed. I think they're getting orders from higher up. Continue doing what you're going to do. Don't stop at anything. So we have probably a year before these horses have totally disappeared. And what's interesting is we approach 2012, the Indians, the Native American Indians, many of them believe that as we take and remove and kill the last of the wild horses, we become more removed from our connection with the Great Spirit. And so it's very important for us to save our horses, not only from the spiritual angle of things, but because it's such a beautiful natural resource, and we should be so proud to have these horses. Thank you for listening and watching, and most of all, please be active to save our wild horses. There's not a lot of time left. Okay, this is Meet America, folks, and we are out here getting ready to watch the BLM gather. This is Chris Hannafel, and Chris, why don't you explain to the public, what I'm seeing here is a lot of empty, vast land that could hold thousands of horses, and I see a few tattered herds, and a landscape that's pristine and gorgeous. I do not see any destruction. And I just am very bewildered that the BLM says that all this land here has been ruined by horses and they have to be removed. Can you give us an explanation for that, please?
Well, I think I'd start by suggesting again that you take a look at the environmental assessment, which explains everything really well. We're a multiple use mandate, you know, the BLM, and it is cold out here. Bear with me just a second.
It's 11 below.
It is 11 below now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Again, you know, I would suggest that you take a look at the environmental assessment. We do have horse herds out here, but if you take a closer look at the horses, you can see that they're really struggling to get through the snow, to get sufficient nutrition. They're not in the best of health right now, body condition wise. We do need to keep the numbers down to the appropriate management level so that we can keep the herds here without having a serious health problem for the horses down the road. It's just a matter of keeping the numbers within the amount that the range can support. If that, you see what I'm saying?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, they seem pretty fat and healthy to me, but I don't know how much you know about horses.
I've had horses all my life, and so I know quite a lot about them. And the horses that I see here don't look like they're struggling. Brian, can you hold that for me a little bit? I'm trying. We are now headed towards the trap, what they call trap site, and we are just out of Pinoche, maybe 10 miles, where we all met and introduced ourselves public. We are taking you on a wild horse roundup so that you can witness for yourself this criminal activity that is being done with our tax dollars. And we have with us driving Craig Downer, who is a wildlife wild horse now for over 35 years in his natural habitat. And Craig, you mentioned that at Calico there was a when the horses are running, the degrees out here was 4 below when we left Pinoche. And they get what they call, for how many miles are they going to be run? Chris Hannafel told me on the phone he didn't know. This is atrocious.
Run for 20 miles.
20 miles in this freezing cold.
Because they try to escape, they go this way and that way, so it's not just as the bird flies. I mean, it varies, but sometimes, like in a 5-mile run, they can actually end up running 4 times that easily.
And then is there any pregnant mares? There are pregnant mares at this time, isn't there?
Yeah, there are, going into
this is the cruelty.
The final phase of their gestation.
Yeah.
They are.
You know, and people, you need to understand that in all this vast land that you are seeing here, they are so mean-spirited that they're saying there's too many horses and they're destroying the environment. Well, guess what? What about the buffalo, the 30 million buffalo or more? Did they destroy the environment? And everything, human beings destroy the environment more than anything. Why can't we let the horses be? They do not destroy the environment. They restore.
They belong here. This is their cradle of evolution.
Yeah.
Yes, this is where they contribute to the soils and to the food chain.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
Look at this vast land where thunderous horses could be. And so this is the criminal activity I want you to witness. Please contact your senators, your congresspeople, talk to your friends. I want you to be aware of what your government is and what it's doing to us, the American people, stealing our tax dollars, destroying our wild.
And setting back the natural adaptive process of these animals are from many generations that are restoring themselves in their valid niche here in western North America.
Yeah, horse. There's the horses. Oh, we...
The horse.
Did you see the foal movie?
Yeah.
Back there?
The what?
Yeah.
Did we see what?
The droppings.
There's the stallion. Hello, darlings.
Oh, I wish I had my... Are you getting it? Let me know when you're done. We'll continue on. It's really great. Free as...
Where is he?
He's down below.
I see him.
That looks like a younger horse.
There we go, darlings. Look at how healthy he is.
Yeah.
Healthy. No one can survive this, but that beautiful horse. And the BLM is saying they're starving. Here's another example of their lies and their deceit and their destructiveness, taking the last little remnants of our wild away as they take our own freedom away.
Look at how spirited they are.
Look at those beautiful ones.
They belong...
This is your America, Americans, and you better start getting active because your government has no respect for you. And this is a typical example of it, taking the last of your wild horses with lies and deceits.
All right.
This beautiful land, all this beautiful land where the wild horses could roam. See how empty it is? There's not the millions of horses there should be, or even the 100,000. The BLM is saying there's 700,000 cattle. And yet they begrudge our 28,000 that may be left. We're not even sure. Horse activists are saying that it might be as low as 15,000. And BLM is saying it can be as high as 37 or 38,000. But folks, look at all this beautiful land where the horses could dwell, our public lands, and they're taking them all, taking it all away. And it's empty. That's how mean-spirited our government is. This is all empty lands, and yet they talk about the environmental impacts of the horse, yet huge gouges of earth for mining are allowed, where they don't even replace the environment. But they begrudge the horse its hoofprints upon the land. But they begrudge the horse its hoofprints upon the land. You better start paying attention to what this government's doing to us and to our wild. We've got to take it back. Okay, there's some horses. There's some more of your wonderful horses, public. Wild and free, but not for long. And do they look like they're hurting this environment? Do you see great gouged out areas of dead like they do with the mining? Do you see any of this? Does any of this look destroyed to you? Unbelievable, the lies. Unbelievable. And I'm here to bring it to you. I'm ready.
Okay, my name is Craig Downer, and I'm a wildlife ecologist. And I honor the horse as a returned native here in North America and here in Nevada, my home state. You have to realize that the wild horse is not the same as a slave horse or a domestic horse. It's a horse that's living as its ancestor did for millions of years, and it's returning to its truer nature out here in the land of its origin and long-standing evolution. So what's wrong with this? They are an asset to the ecosystem. They help reduce the dry, flammable vegetation, and their droppings help to build the soil. They also help to seed the plants, and they contribute to the food chain. So what's the problem? Why is they all this negativity and saying, oh, there's too many, they do this and that because they go take a drink and because they eat their food? It's just discrimination, negativism. And the Bureau of Land Management also controls mining on public lands, and as well as the ranching and the off-road vehicles, but they will often allow them to really rape the resources. They'll allow huge developments to support the cattle and sheep ranching, huge subsidies. They'll also allow tremendous open pit mines that allow cyanide heap leaching and drain the water tables. So we're just asking for fairness. And you know, the law says that they shall be the principal presence where found in 1971. And that's just not happening. They're being marginalized. And they're not getting their fair share out here. So my proposal is reserve design for naturally self-stabilizing populations and not over gathering, excessive gathering, which is now occurring. Right. And these are not, they're setting these horses up for inbreeding because there's too few left. That's my opinion.
Speaking about environmental assessments, I personally have an experience with that, and many, many times where I found incredible flaws in these environmental assessments, favoritism, outright lies, and I won a lawsuit against the Kootenai National Forest because they were going to aerial spray with Roundup 85,000 acres because of so-called invasive species, and we stopped them because their environmental assessment was so flawed. What I see here is pristine, beautiful landscape, and I see healthy horses so far. The ones that I photographed at closer range, I do not see, I mean, maybe close up when we do the roundups, but even so, that's part of nature, and these are wild animals. And under that wild jurisdiction, they have the right to live a wild life. I do not see thousands and thousands of starving wild horses here dotting the landscape and a mined-out landscape. And I just need to have you comment on this beautiful, pristine environment, and it's so contrary to what you're saying. The BLM is saying, let's put it that way. Thank you.
Well, and obviously you have your opinion, and we appreciate your opinion, and we're hoping that you participate and continue to participate in the public process, but we disagree. We're looking at the horses. We're saying there's not enough feed out here during the winter to keep them through the winter. Come spring, there could be a problem if we have as many horses out here as we have now. And we need to pull some of these horses off so that we can maintain healthy herds for the future.
My understanding is wild animals aren't supposed to be pampered. They starve and they die. That's part of Mother Nature. There probably were thousands of buffalo dying in the old days. Many deer die from starvation. And I also understand that the BLM has also tried to remove a lot of predators. And it's not your fault. We appreciate very much this openness of yours in the dialogue. And you're great, Chris. You're absolutely amazing. But there are high-powered lobbyists in Washington who get huge salaries that lobby our representatives, and that's why we, the public, need to change so people like Chris can truly do a job of protecting and great stewards of the land. And I believe in your attitude, you really are a great steward of the land. That's what you want to truly be. But this idea of pampering wild animals, that they should starve to death, that they can't starve to death, well, that's part of being a wild animal, and horses have been around for, you know, I don't know, a long time, millions of years probably, and then they disappeared, and the same DNA of horse that was taken away is back here again. And my hope is that the BLM will start listening, because our politicians will change, because the public is going to be involved and active, and that's how democracy works. And this public process that you're offering us is a very important one, and you're a great spokesman.
I'm trying to locate these horses for you.
And they're all grouped together for safety, see? That's their instinct.
They're grouped together for safety. It's a straggly little herd. I think that's them right there. A straggly little herd, you see?
Just broken, separated into.
Here we have health care issues.
That's a large group actually coming in.
Yeah, I think it's probably 2 or 3 bands.
Right.
Huge deficit. Huge deficit in this country, and this is what they're spending our tax dollars on, folks. Millions of dollars. I don't know how much this particular roundup's costing you. Straggly little herd. It's the symbol of what they're doing.
No, and they're the ones that are living it.
And they have to live it. They have to live this horror. And that's kind of what they're doing to us. And their families will be torn apart forever. The BLM does not allow families to be together. And they castrate the stallions without any pain medication or very little. It's just a pain relaxant. So there you have your American Veterinarian Association. All in the name of humanity. Just too awful.
There's the Judas horse, see?
They're coming to take their freedom away, folks. All in the name of livestock and environmental impact, while they allow mining to leave huge gashes in the earth. And 700,000 cattle. Now they're in the trap. There they are. And there's no video witness down there to see the injuries.
He's closing the gate.
Closing the gates. Their freedom is gone, and their families will be torn asunder. All with your tax dollars, but not for long. We got to stop it this year, folks. $11,000 horses are scheduled to be rounded up in this area. And that'll probably end them Be straggly little
They were
herds.
saying yesterday 12,000.
Oh, 12,000 now.
It was 11, now it's 12.
Now it's 12. That'll finish off this area pretty much.
This area is 750.
Yeah, it's the whole western United States.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's the whole western United States? I thought it was just...
fire going
They got a fire going?
or something. What's all that steam? What's all that
The
stuff?
steam is heat.
Is that from what?
Either exhaust from the truck or steam off the horse.
If the horses were putting out that much steam, what's this one that's coming out? I'm just wondering because I haven't noticed that before.
And where'd all the horses in the chute go?
Well, they're all massed together there. So
Mashed together, huh? Oh, and guess what? That's a smoke screen, I bet.
Oh, so we can't see?
Yeah. Very clever. I bet that is.
Could be.
That's a beautiful smoke screen, folks.
I've never seen it
You
before.
can't see anything.
No, it's the steam coming off the horse.
See, they've worked up a lot of body heat, if that's the case.
Uh-huh.
So what they'll do is they'll start to load these here, not right this second, but you'll see them here, I'm sure.
You know what? There's so much reflection in the thing. I don't know what's going on, but I can hardly see anything because I mostly see my own voice.
Yeah. I don't like those channels. I prefer direct view. I'm even trying to get advice right now.
Is it on?
No,
Okay. Yeah. Just do the best you can.
how do you do it? Did you hear your reflection?
No, I'm in the shade. You might want to get in the shade.
They'll be separating,
What?
they'll be separating the stallions from the mares.
Oh, God. Hold on. Okay. I have to...
You want me to help you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
It was so horrendous when they had their own evaluation.
Okay. Very good. Here's... You just hold that end. And... Okay. I want someone to be... Here comes the horse. That steam you see is from the horses sweating.
Does Chris agree with that? Or is that...
Chris, do you agree with that? He's not saying.
Do what?
That the steam is coming from the horses' backs.
I do believe it is the steam. I will double check, but that would be...
We don't know what that... He's saying he's going to double check, but he doesn't know.
Well, the easy way to tell is when they load on the trailer and the
What?
trailer moves.
Can you face me, Laura?
The easy way to tell is when they load on the trailer and the trailer moves, the steam goes with them.
Aha, yes, and we noticed that the steam was coming from the trailer folks as well, so that is what that is.
Oh, right. So, yeah, they probably worked up such a sweat
Yeah.
that it's just steam coming
Yeah.
out there.
You see the trailer right there, that other one down there?
And then this freezes on their body, folks,
Yeah.
plus their lungs are cold. So those horses, many of them may be getting sick, and we'll never know about it.
You can take video and photos,
Okay.
and at that point I'll have a better handle on where the horses are going, because they're going to ship to maybe 2 or 3 different facilities.
the horses are going to come.
They could be coming this way.
I would be ready to.
Hasselblad. I had a friend whose father worked for Hasselblad. That's back when I worked in fashion.
I guess my question, just in your, you might comment on what he said.
The BLM again is mandated by the 1971 Wild Horse and Burro Free Roaming Wild Horse and Burro Act to maintain healthy herds. We're maintaining healthy herds. Part of that process is to gather the excess horses off the land. We certainly appreciate Mr. Downer's viewpoints and hope that he'll continue to participate in the public process and bring his viewpoints forward. We listen to those viewpoints as well as those of many other people. A lot of differing viewpoints as we go through the process.
What about when you run? I hear a veterinarian said that when horses are run up to 20 miles, and of course they're zigzagging around by these helicopters, what do you say to the freezing lung that can happen, that happened at Calico? Is that a possibility here?
I wasn't at Calico, and I'm not aware of any freezing lung.
Okay. Craig, you might want to comment
Here,
on that?
hold on, get the microphone.
Through running, which is very stressful, helicopter chasing, they can cause their alveoli in the lungs to burst, and it can cause severe pneumonia to the horses, and they can die from it. And later, when they get to the holding facilities, they can succumb to respiratory failure.
Have you seen this at Calico?
Yes, I have seen this at Calico, but we were in blizzard conditions there a little about a year ago, and we asked the vet about that, and he tried to minimize it. But the fact is that many of them have succumbed in this freezing weather, and they have died subsequently, days later, when they're brought to the holding facilities.
I'd like to respond to Chris's comment, and I really appreciate that he says that he would like to maintain healthy herds out there, but I think one of the best ways to maintain healthy herds is just to allow the predators to come back, and that would maintain the population levels without having to do these roundups. So the BLM would stop removing the predators because of the pressure from the cattle industry on our Congress. Then none of these there would be absolutely no excuse for doing these helicopter roundups. So let's bring back the predators and let Mother Nature take care of things instead of man. There's plenty of land for Mother Nature to strike a balance out here.
Yeah, it's 11 degrees out here. Aren't these animals admirable that they can survive out here in this stark but beautiful landscape? I want to share with you something else that happened here in the Ely district. Did you realize that a little over a year ago, 1.4 million acres of legal 1971 herd areas in 12 different herd management areas were zeroed out? That is, there's now no more wild horses allowed in these areas, and they tried to get every last one. And there was only 620 there, and then I said, well, but there's always going to be a good number over in the Eagle Complex. That's where we are now. And now they're going to take this number down further. I just think it's unfair that they're giving the hog share of the resources to the livestock, and they're marginalizing the wild horses. They're buckling into the ranchers. And they're not listening to the general public that love these animals. Millions of people love these animals, and they're a great spiritual boost to them. And the animals in their own right deserve our respect, and they deserve a place out here where they can be genetically viable. Okay?
Introduce yourself and what you do.
My name is Laura Lee, and I'm project manager for Herd Watch, and I work for Grassroots Horse. And we're a citizen action group that comes out and takes action. But again, that process of taking action, this process, once you get here today to the roundup, the process for public input and to change what's occurring out here, it's done, it's over. That there's things called RMPs, Resource Management Plans, RAC meeting, Resource Advisory Council meetings. That's where the public needs to be educated, and that's what they need to begin to read and look at if they want to affect change and really advocate for the horses. Here we're documenting what occurs. We're keeping an eye on the horses and trying to kind of educate the public to what occurs here. But this isn't where change is going to occur. Change is going to occur with the public learning about these RMPs, learning about this process, really standing up and becoming that interest for the horses and becoming the voice for the horses, and that's where it'll occur. And I think that's real important.
Now, you have a blog spot, don't you?
Yeah, I've got a blog site. It's on WordPress. It's Art and Horses Laura Lee at WordPress.com, but grassrootshorse.com. You can link into my blog and link into their blog, and that's kind of what I'll update through. And we do have some lawsuits now standing, First Amendment suits, which basically say we have a right to see and a right to know, which again is how change is affected. It's when the press brings these stories to the public, and the public can then form their opinion, get involved. But again, getting involved starts with things like those resource management plans.
So if they go to the
grassrootshorse.com.
Grassrootshorse.com.
Yes.
Is there those sites available for people to go and make comments when the comments are needed?
Yes, we link into those. AWHPC, American, let's see, they're wildhorsepreservation.com, and they do alerts all the time and are trying to do a real good job. I've been working with them as well, trying to educate the public in those resource management plans and all those public comment areas.
All right.
Okay? But they're also listed, so if you go to grassrootshorse.com, there's a links list, and you can go through those links. There's some wonderful websites out there to learn from, some really great information with Equine Welfare Alliance and American Herds, which is another blog that's done, and she has amazing information as well.
Craig Downer feels that it's way too cold for these horses to be run uncertain miles, because you don't even know how many miles they're going to be run, do you?
The exact number of miles?
Yeah.
No, but I'm sure that they will run these, and not actually run these horses, but they will herd these horses a safe and viable distance. They're not going to run these horses, and they're not going to herd these horses or guide these horses an excessive distance.
How can they not run them when they're terrified by these helicopters?
Well, you know, again, you're asking for an opinion, you're trying to bait me, and I'm not going to be baited, and I'm not going to enter a
Not baiting at all. I'm coming from a humanitarian point of view. It's very obvious. It's 4 below 0, and there is that deep ammonia question these horses can get, and to run in this kind of cold is inhumane. And I'm coming from a humane public standpoint. I'm shocked, not at you, Chris, you're just basically doing your job, but I'm shocked that the BLM, Ken Salazar, and President Obama are allowing and putting people like you in this kind of position of cruelty to our public horses. I'm extremely upset about this. This is a horrible, cruel, terrible thing, that plight and that we're facing here with these horses, and even vets say that this should not be happening. And so that's what I'm. Yes, and so that's what I'm. Yes, and the question is, would you please call off this roundup today because of the cold, for humanitarian and concerned aspects of these horses?
As you can see right now, we're not gathering horses. We're waiting for the weather to warm up. If and when we feel that the horses would be in any danger at all, we would stop this gather. We don't feel that there is a danger at this point, but again, should we feel that there is a concern, we would stop the gather.
Thank you. On public land right now is in Eureka County here in Nevada. There's a corporation coming in called Eureka Moly. Well, Moly is actually an international company, and for example, they own mines in Australia, South America, all over the place. But when you trace Moly back, Moly is owned by the Bank of China. Okay, that's one part of this. Now, coming into Eureka County here in Nevada, what they're doing is they are going to be using 3/4 of the available water to do this mining project, where they mine a mineral called molybdenum. Molybdenum is high heat, so it's used for things like nuclear reactors, things like that. The way this corporation is set up, for the first 10 years, every piece of ore that comes out of the ground goes direct to China. It's also set up so that it occurs so quickly and so fast that if anything is wrong with what's happening with the way the water is utilized, it's going to be occurring so quickly that you won't be able to correct the problem within the 10 years that China gets all the ore. So it's set up in a very interesting way. They've also put the water into an ag corporation, which is now going to give it to the mine. So if the mine goes under, China still owns 3/4 of the water.
Privatized?
That's how it works.
Do you hear this, people? Is this Senator Reid? Is he part of this?
Yeah, Reid's part of this.
Oh, yeah. Nevadans?
Good old handout,
oh,
Harry.
boy.
But however, this project, because my interest is wild horses, 3 HMAs are directly affected.
And HMAs are herd management areas.
Are directly affected. The aquifer affects 5 more. So 8 HMAs, 8 herd management areas, will be directly affected by the operation of this mine.
And the pollution of this mine.
And do they have any...
And the water. So when BLM will then talk about multiple use. So you take a decreased water allotment into account when you do their equations to determine AUMs out there for cattle and AUMs out there for wild horses. And so when you now decrease that water, because we now have this mine in another county that's in that aquifer, then the equation for available water and forage is going to go down for wildlife, cattle, and horses. And so then we'll see another decrease in wild horses. We did have a win in court, and people really don't recognize what's already occurred. In our first injunctive order for Oahe, when we went in there, the judge declared that they can't close public lands, that it's an infringement on my First Amendment rights, your First Amendment rights, all our First Amendment rights. And so they can say there's a public observation day, but they can't close public land anymore. And so therefore they set up a public observation area for every day of a roundup. So roundups are technically open to the public now every day. So even if it says public observation day, which is what today is, well, tomorrow I'll come out and meet them, come out tomorrow, because it's public land and they can designate an area for me to stand in.
Wait.
Or deal with me on public land.
Well, public, I want you to meet Laura Lee, the most amazing wild horse observer, one that we have, and please start supporting her by going to
grassrootshorse.com.
grassrootshorse.com and donate $10 a month. Make a commitment and contact all your email alert people to do the same. And let's get thousands of people donating $10 a month to grassrootshorse.com.
And help me pay for that attorney.
How much is that attorney for that lawsuit?
I don't want to publicly talk about the amount of money, but everybody knows what attorneys cost. Yes. He is giving us quite a wonderful break, and he's been so willing to learn and so willing to work with us that, you know, we need to keep him. We need to keep him, and like I said, we've already had a win. And a lot of people don't recognize that, and we're moving forward now to try to open these facilities again to public observation. The case is sitting, it's going to be going for a hearing, we're getting ready for discovery, which is very exciting because we can start to get copies of these internal documents. But every hour that attorney works costs money. Every mile I drive out here costs money, and it's tough, and it's not a life of luxury. I swear to you.
As you can see, and you live with your dog, your wonderful dog, and your little Land Rover with the broken door, can't even afford.
It's not even a Land Rover, it's an Explorer. And no, I can't open the driver's side door because it's broken, but I'm not using the money to fix it because it's money I could put in the gas tank.
That's right, that's right. You see, and she goes out, you go out, and you film all these wild horses in their natural state to prove that they're not hurting the environment and not hurting...
Well, and not just the wild horses, but the water sources and the forage and I go to the counties, and I'm starting to look up the other resources that are happening and who owns them and who owns the water rights, because that's a state issue, and learning about how to get involved in the R&P process and all of these other issues in order to expand the education base and then pass that on to everyone.
Well, everyone know that Laura Ley is now an official Meet America reporter on behalf of the wild horses. What condition have you found these wild horses in comparison to what BLM is saying?
This is a time of year that when you come out, it's winter time, and we are coming into the middle of winter. So the horses aren't going to be as fat as they are, say, in September or the beginning of October, because they're starting to use those resources that they've gotten during summer. When you start to see horses at the end of February, again, that's when you're going to also see horses in their hardest time of year. They're wild animals. You look at all the other wild animals out here and you see the same thing. So this is not the time of year when they look their best. They look their best end of September. If you talk to the wild horse and burro specialists and really get them talking, most of them will say that the best time to do a roundup is September and October if you're going to do one. We want to do the autumn roundups. But that's only 2 months. And so with the current protocol and how many that they're doing, they can't do them all in September and October. And so you end up with January roundups. You know, we obviously didn't learn from Calico last year.
What happened at Calico?
Roundup. They had slated almost 3,000 horses for roundup. Ended up rounding up almost 2,000 because they couldn't find 3,000. And then we had over a 10% death rate.
What did they die of?
There were multiple causes. Some of them were direct causes from the roundup: the broken legs, the broken necks. Hooves fell off of babies from abscesses from running over the volcanic rock. But then you also have the trauma injuries, like a broken neck and a broken back from loading and offloading and being handled in the facilities. You have disease, you have respiratory issues. You know, we had the pigeon fever, not pigeon fever issue in one of the facilities, and it's constant. So we really did have an over 10% death rate from Calico.
Hold on. Oh, Craig, why don't you say real quick
they should have rebars here called wild horse anti-cattle guards, so the wild horses don't break their legs. They can panic when they're chased.
Yeah.
And I found the case up in Calico where one had broken his leg.
So here's another example of BLM's negligence and not doing what they should to help protect our wild
horses. Have been here pawing the bushes to get some food, so get some grass.
So this is what they eat. They eat these little tiny bushes.
Yeah.
Where's the horse stuff? Where's the horse stuff?
Amazing. Look what these wild horses can survive on. They don't need hay, but when they're put in these holding areas, they're given hay, and oftentimes it's such a different diet that they get colicky and die. This is reported by the good people, Laura Ley, who you just interviewed. We can hear the helicopter rounding up and terrorizing our wild horses as we speak. It's so sad. Instead of letting them be, which would be no cost to the American public, despite what the cattle men tell you.
I wanted to discuss when there's this thing called, when BLM does a proposal, we as Americans have this honor that has been bestowed upon us. And this honor is the right to participate in government processes, in the management of our nation's resources. And BLM and other government, BLM is required to involve the public in this. When you were talking about how they're disrespecting the public, I have become involved in every possible level of that public process. And as a result, I've ended up learning to investigate all kinds of laws and case laws and BLM regulations and BLM policy and various things like that. And there is no words to express how flagrantly they are abusing the laws, not just like, you know, sending Mustangs off into the night. We're talking about basic American rights on the most basic level that they are being incredibly arrogant about, right? They literally are acting like that we serve them and that public lands and public resources are for the elite, okay? So now with respect to the last blog story and the amount of research and stuff, some of the stuff that contained was research and information that was garnered from many different horse and burro advocates, a lot of hard work, like the capture status records that American Horse Defense Fund was finally able to get from BLM. They had actually asked for the capture status, the records of every horse and burro that is in long-term holding. And these are the horses that BLM is claiming is, you know, causing the escalating cost. BLM was not able and unwilling to provide that information. They only were able to provide information on horses and burros that had been removed, gathered is what they like to call it, removed within the last year. So there was like this vast thing of records that they wouldn't or couldn't account for.
Of horses that are supposed to be in holding and aren't?
Supposed to be in holding. Well, we don't know where they are, but they will not provide any records on them, okay? But in that short period of time, it was actually a little over a 9-month period that we were able to get records for. We were able to cross-reference what they claimed were in holding with different BLM reports about what they said they removed and what actually ended up in the capture pens. And just in the little bit of the areas that we were able to cross-reference, we already started finding discrepancies, you know, 20, 30, 40 horses gone. Or in some cases, BLM reported they never removed them, but they showed up in the pens. It's like, there's definitely some funny numbers in some of the things that we've been able to crowbar out of BLM. Another one that came up with that is that an advocate, and again, that post was actually the work of a lot of different people. Another advocate had spotted a BLM truck and managed to get, it was a horse hauling truck that had a big BLM logo on the side. It was actually 2 of them, and they had 2 consecutive license plates, and so they were actually able to get photos of the license plate. So another advocate put in a Freedom of Information Act request, and it came back that they had no records of the trucks at all. And then, but they were able to provide, they said, well, we can provide information that the horse trailers came from another BLM place, but you're going to have to resubmit your request. And so we did a little investigation, and we found out that those horse trailers were brand new in 2008, which is the same year that BLM said, we don't have enough money to continue to feed and support all these horses and burros. And so now we're considering euthanizing tens of thousands of these animals. So that the same year that they don't have the money to feed them, we're finding brand new horse trailers and trucks that they say they have no records of purchasing. So like that blog story is actually a compilation of a lot of different people. And one of the things that I try to do on American Herds is I try to give people an outlet that may not be in a position to be so public or so vocal about it for whatever their particular reasons are. They may not want, you know, to be associated with. But there's a lot of people that are working on this issue. Now, to kind of get back to your question about horses going to slaughter, we don't have any proof. But one of the reasons we don't have any proof is because BLM will not let any member of the public near anything. We've asked for cameras on helicopters that conduct gathers. We've asked for cameras on the trucks. We've asked, we can't get into long-term holding. We get very limited access to short-term holding. They basically manage this program like it's a classified military operation instead of, you know, something as simple as these are natural resources. These are just horses and burros.
We noticed that today.
Yes. So it's very disconcerting, and it's also, you know, you don't realize how much they seem to be treating the public like the enemy. Since 2008, they started another Freedom of Information Act request that was done after BLM made this announcement that they were going to euthanize all these, you know, they were considering euthanizing all these animals. they put together a team, and they had these conference calls, and they were trying to discuss various options, and if we had to euthanize horses, what we would do it. And we found some very, very revealing information in that stuff. In fact, at the top, or the cover page, it said for internal use only, not for public release. Okay, but we did get them through the Freedom of Information Act request, and some of the things were, one of the things we noticed is they began referring to anybody who was interested in wild horse and burros and you know, the program that was not 100% supportive of their gather and removal techniques as eco-terrorists. There was one of the lines in there that they were discussing that if they had to do mass euthanasia on horses and burros, that they would have to shield and hide to secret locations from the public, from Congress, and from the media. Okay, so yeah, there was a lot of other really heavy things. In fact, there was that was in there. One of them was
and that's what they're doing now. They're hiding and shielding these horses, saying to the public that we're not going to euthanize them, but they're disappearing, public.
Well, we certainly can't get very much access to them, that's for sure.
Yeah,
that's for sure. And one of the other things that I wanted to mention that makes this highly suspicious is this has kind of been forgotten, but starting in 1992, a grand jury investigation was launched in Texas, and it was called the Del Rio investigation. And it was actually initiated by BLM's own law enforcement officers who had stumbled onto what they believed was possibly a Mustang to slaughter ring. And there was 4 years that this grand jury investigation was going on. The law enforcement officer, according to the historical records, gathered over 3,000 pieces of evidence of BLM employees involved in selling Mustangs to slaughter. What ended up happening was the straw that finally broke the camel's back on this is that the grand jury put in a subpoena to count the number of horses in one of their holding facilities, and they were basically denied. Okay, a subpoena from a grand jury was denied, and the federal government basically went and through a variety of legal tactics and intimidation tactics, they went after the BLM law enforcement officers that had collected this information. Okay, they dismantled, and not one piece of that evidence was ever heard. And I still find this stunning. One of the most amazing things about it is the DOI's lawyer, one of the DOI's lawyer, actually argued the case that the practice of selling Mustangs to slaughter by BLM personnel was so common, it would be unfair to prosecute 1 or 2 individuals. Okay, so there was this huge thing with that. Then, and the FBI got involved, Department of Justice got involved, Office of Inspector General got involved, and a big whitewash happened. And nothing, the whole thing was dismantled. The case was, you know.
When was this?
The investigation ran from 1992 to 1996 when it was disbanded. Okay, up until that point in time, the BLM was required to submit to Congress every 2 years a report on the Wild Horse and Burro program. After this, in 1996, the BLM has never again submitted a report to Congress, and Congress has not asked for one. Okay, so there's actually this history of it, and after all this dirt was starting to surface, this can of worms was starting to open, they slammed it shut, and nobody has looked at it since. And so instead of it becoming, you know, coming to light, so like there's a lot of history, at least, that leads one to believe, especially when you use that in conjunction with the way that they keep such an iron curtain on this program, that it's very possible horses and burros are disappearing into the night.